Hello and good afternoon. My name is Prita. I'm from the Consumer and Investor Office at the Securities Commissions Malaysia. Welcome to today's InvestSmart Online Series webinar. Today's webinar is titled Becoming a Smart Investor, Knowing Your Rights and Tips to Avoid Scams. First of all, we would like to thank you for taking your time to be here today. Next, please. We are pleased to have with us today Puan Shalawati Mustafa from Federation of Investment Managers, Malaysia, which is FIMM, to present on the topic Becoming a Smart Investor, Knowing Your Rights and Tips to Avoid Scams. Please allow me to share a brief background on Puan Shalawati. Puan Shalawati has more than 25 years of experience in the financial and capital markets, both as an industry participant and as a regulator. Her current responsibility in FIMM include overseeing the registration, supervision, rules-making, and complaints management involving distributors and consultants who market and distribute unit trusts and private retirement schemes. Prior to joining FIMM, she was the head of financial crime and compliance advisory supporting global and commercial banking businesses in a foreign bank. During her stint as a regulator, she was leading a team in supervising the investment management industry and was also a member of a working group involved in the joint mutual evaluation exercise by the Financial Action Task Force and Asia Pacific Group Money Laundering in 2014. Now, please stay tuned till the end of the session as we'll be having a short Q&A session. This will be followed by a pop quiz session for all participants. Also, a reminder to all participants to take our survey. The link will be shared in the chat window. Next, please. Now, I will pass it over to Puan Shalawati to share her presentation titled Becoming a Smart Investor, Knowing Your Rights and Tips to Avoid Scams.
Thanks, Prita. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, you're right.
Yes, okay. Thanks so much. Assalamualaikum and good morning to all listeners who are joining this webinar. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Securities Commission Malaysia for this invite. It is a great pleasure for me to participate as a speaker in InvestSmart 2022. I prepared a pre-recorded presentation titled Being a Smart Investor, Knowing Your Rights and Tips to Avoid Scams. This particular topic is chosen as we at FIMM value investor protection a lot. And we opine that investor has a bigger role to play as the first level and the best level of defense when it comes to investment. So without further ado, let's take a listen to the presentation.
Percayalah cakap saya, cik dah tangan je.
Pilih perunding yang sah.
Jangan risau cik, tanda tangan je.
Jangan tanda tangan borang pelaburan yang tidak lengkap.
Saya perunding yang sah. Ini kad kuasa saya.
Melaburlah secara bijak.
Kalau dapat lihat ya, ini penyati cik untuk 3 bulan pertama.
Di FIMM, kepentingan pelabur, keutamaan kami untuk skim unit amanah dan persaraan swasta.
If you were an avid cinema goer back in 2017, you may feel a sense of deja vu from that video you just saw. I'm here to inform you that yes, that is the same video we played before your movie screenings. We're playing this video for you now because today, nearly 5 years since that video aired in theaters, almost all the misconducts which occurred still apply, barring of course failure to show the FIMM authorization card, which we'll get to in a bit. If you've never invested before, these types of stories will certainly turn you off the idea of doing so. And that's really unfortunate because by holding back on investing in unit trust or private retirement schemes, you are not making full use of the financial opportunities out there. So that's kind of the backdrop to today's presentation. We're here today because we want you to put your best foot forward prior to investing. Instead of letting fear control you, you need to be aware of the risks and to be equipped with the ways to avoid scams and other similar challenges. But before that, let us begin by introducing ourselves. The Federation of Investment Managers Malaysia, or FIMM, is a self-regulatory organization that regulates and advocates for the development and growth of the unit trust scheme and private retirement scheme industry. FIMM is responsible for enhancing the professional standards of unit trust and private retirement scheme consultants, as well as safeguarding the needs and interests of investors. Now that we know one another a little better, let's move on to the next slide, where we'll zoom into the type of complaints FIMM has been receiving over the past 3 years. FIMM receives all sorts of complaints from investors, but over the past 3 years, these complaints consistently hit our radar. At the very top, you'll see unauthorized transactions, followed by unsatisfactory services, misrepresentation, accepting cash, as well as misappropriation of money. We'll go into detail for a few of these complaints in the next couple of slides. We'll also share some tips to avoid getting caught in these situations, so stay tuned for that. Topping the list of the highest nature of complaints over the last 3 years is unauthorized transactions. Unauthorized transactions are generally defined as transactions such as subscription, switching, and redemption, which are performed on the investor's account without the investor's consent. From the sound of this definition, you may think that investors have no way of avoiding instances of unauthorized transactions, but you would be wrong. There are ways in which an investor can actually play a more active role in mitigating the chances of unauthorized transactions happening to their account. So let's look into this. Here we have 2 scenarios to share with you. On the left, we have your regular investor, one who has exposed himself to potential unauthorized transactions. And on the right, we have your smart investor, one who sat through this presentation, is aware of the rights, and knows a scam when he sees one. A regular investor, from our experience, tends to take the convenient route. To avoid having to meet their consultant over and over again in the event they wish to conduct a new transaction, they agree to pre-sign blank investment transaction forms. Pre-signing may sound nice and convenient because you may think it saves you time and effort, but whenever you pre-sign a document, imagine yourselves handing over the keys to your car. Sure, you can trust the person not to take your car for a spin, but if that car is a brand new Ferrari, very few can help themselves from scratching that itch. Do yourselves a favor and keep your keys to yourself. A smart investor refuses to pre-sign their investment forms and always current dates their forms or signatures to mitigate doubt. Next, a regular investor rarely, if not ever, checks their investment statements. Going back to our car analogy earlier, imagine getting yourselves a car but never checking its tires. On a bad day, you may just end up stranded by the roadside. Be like a smart investor instead and monitor your investment statements on a regular basis. That way, you can avoid being stranded on a roadside by tending to your tires before they turn flat. Lastly, a regular investor gives the consultant full reign over their unit trust or private retirement scheme accounts. Remember what I said about sharing your keys? Well, this is akin to sharing your ATM password. As close as you may be to your consultant, you should not give them the full authority to do with your investment as they would like. Be like a smart investor. Insist that your consultant obtain your approval for every transaction to your account. In summary, unauthorized transactions typically occur because the regular investor takes a hands-off approach to their investment and gives their consultant access to their investment forms by pre-signing and their investment journeys by not monitoring their own investment. Unauthorized transactions can be avoided when investors hold onto their keys, hide their passwords, and monitor their investments. Next, we have unsatisfactory services. Unsatisfactory services is a catch-all complaint that typically occurs when a consultant fails to update their investor on the status of their investment, has a bad attitude, or simply isn't servicing the investor well. If your consultant is giving you unsatisfactory services, we would suggest that you first lodge your complaint with the distributor, as the distributor would be in a better position to take immediate action to ensure your consultant is responsive. As before, let's review what a smart investor would do to prevent unsatisfactory services compared to his counterpart, the regular investor. Unlike regular investors, who are happy to forgo the suitability assessment process in order to save time, smart investors genuinely want to know what risk level they have. They therefore agree to undergo the suitability assessment process whenever it is required. For those of you unfamiliar, suitability assessment is part of the investment application process. This stage of the process enables you as an investor to understand where you fall in regards to risk tolerance. It also helps you ascertain whether the fund you are ready to invest in matches your profile. Some investment application forms give investors the opportunity to bypass the suitability assessment stage of the process. But a smart investor would take the extra step anyway, just to ensure they are investing in the right fund. Next, a regular investor simply signs on the dotted line of any investment form without asking. This is unlike the smart investor who always takes the time to ask questions, ponder on new products prior to investing in them, and finally is not pressured to invest. It is also important to note that as per our previous case study on unauthorized transactions, a smart investor reduces the chances of facing unsatisfactory services by monitoring his own investment. The next complaint on our list is misrepresentation. Misrepresentation occurs when consultants fail to disclose or accurately explain a product's features and/or its risks. Misrepresentation can also occur when a product's features are greatly exaggerated. To avoid falling into the trap of misrepresentation, a smart investor will always do their own research and verify what their consultant has to say. This is unlike the regular investor who accepts the consultant's words at face value and runs the risk of falling victim to a complete scam. Next, a smart investor reads through all written material available for the product and ensures he fully understands the risks involved prior to investing. The smart investor's counterpart, on the other hand, once again asks no questions and blindly signs on investment forms without fully comprehending what he is getting himself into. We've reached our final case study of the day, which comprises of two very popular but very dangerous misconducts. Here we have accepting cash and misappropriation of money. More often than not, these two complaints happen together. Accepting cash occurs when an investor hands over cash to their consultant or transfers money intended for unit trust or private retirement scheme investment directly to their consultant's account. The money transferred or given to the consultant then becomes misappropriated. Misappropriation of money occurs when a consultant uses the money received from the investor for purposes other than what it was intended for. For instance, for purposes other than unit trust or private retirement scheme investment. To avoid getting your money misappropriated, the answer is simple. Don't hand money over to your consultant. A smart investor always refuses to hand money over to their consultant, no matter how convenient the process may seem, whereas a regular investor does the exact opposite. Stop doing it, guys. Regardless of whether that consultant is your childhood friend, your coworker, or even your relative, you have no idea how many investors have lost their money simply because they handed it over to someone else. Earlier we mentioned that our tips were designed to help you avoid scams. To emphasize, we really believe that those tips will work if you apply them diligently. That said, we are aware that there are certain limitations to what an investor can do. That's why FIMM exists, to support your investment and regulate the industry. So here we've summarized a few of FIMM's roles. We are an SRO, as we've mentioned before, so our responsibility extends past regulation by also acting as industry representative. For purposes of this presentation, however, let's just focus on our regulatory role. As a regulator, FIMM's role is summarily broken down into 3 buckets. To understand what FIMM does better, we like to think of our role in stages as a sort of life cycle. The first stage, gatekeeping, refers to the pre-registration stage, where FIMM will play a role in ensuring that only those who are eligible may enter the industry and become registered consultants. The second stage, supervision, applies to consultants and distributors registered with FIMM. It's not enough to simply pass an exam and fulfill the registration standards. FIMM will also monitor distributors and consultants to ensure that they are constantly in compliance with the relevant rules and regulations. Finally, the third stage, enforcement, comes into the picture when a distributor or a consultant has failed to comply with the rules and regulations. Think of this stage as the judge and jury part of the process, where we will do our best to help you obtain justice. On that note, let us explore each stage of the process in further detail. As previously mentioned, the first stage, gatekeeping, refers to FIMM's role in ensuring only the best are able to enter the industry. As the word gatekeeping so aptly describes, we act as the gatekeepers to ensure that only those who meet the necessary qualifications may become consultants. The qualifications I'm talking about are: firstly, our unregistered person will have to pass our computerized unit trust scheme or computerized private retirement scheme examination, as the case may be. Secondly, unregistered persons who wish to become consultants with FIMM must fulfill several criteria, such as they must at least be 21 years old, have at least 3 credits in SPM, and they must be fit and proper. Once a consultant becomes registered, it doesn't stop there. Even a registered consultant can do a bad thing, so that's where FIMM puts its detective hat on. Have any of you watched the latest Batman movie? Well, think of us as Robert Pattinson's Batman in that we patrol the unit trust and private retirement schemes industry to keep it safe. However, unlike Robert Pattinson, who works the night shift, FIMM works the day shift in that our operating hours are 8:30 to 5:30. Through our supervisory role, FIMM ensures that both consultants and distributors comply with the relevant rules and regulations. We do this through the following supervisory activities. We conduct off-site reviews, we conduct on-site examinations, supervisory engagements, social media surveillance on consultants, as well as focus group interviews on consultants. Finally, the last stage of our regulatory process comes into the picture when, despite all our gatekeeping and supervisory efforts, a consultant or distributor is found to have breached our rules. If you are an investor and your consultant has done you wrong, you may initiate our complaint handling and enforcement process by lodging a complaint to any of our case officers. FIMM's investigation officers will investigate complaints made against either consultants and/or distributors. With enough evidence, the case will go for disciplinary proceedings, where a consultant may be sanctioned accordingly. The type of sanctions imposed on a consultant can be anything from a warning letter for less serious offenses to fines or barrings from future registration for the more serious cases. Next, we go into the third and final segment of our presentation before the Q&As. In this segment, we'll share some tips and takeaways to hopefully help you avoid scams and make the most out of your investment journey. In the past, FIMM consultants would carry around an authorization card that they could show you to prove that they are indeed registered with us. However, we noted that these cards can be replicated, so we have since done away with it. Now the onus is on investors to verify that the person they have spoken to is in fact an authorized FIMM consultant. All you need to do is go to our website and select the feature, "Is my consultant authorized?" From there, you need only type in their full name of the so-called consultant, their FIMM number, or their IC number, and the results will pop up for you. If the results come out blank, then be warned, they may not be who you think they are. The Securities Commission Malaysia maintains a list of unit trust and private retirement scheme funds which are approved for sale. These lists are available on the Security Commission's or the SC's website. We've had cases in the past where investors have put money into a fund which isn't actually regulated by FIMM or the SC. Make no mistakes. In cases like this, there is not much we can do but to sanction this consultant for misrepresentation. As an investor, if you lose money to an unauthorized fund, there is very little you can do to recall that money. So as inconvenient as it is, do not fall for this scam. Do a background check and make sure you're putting your money into a legitimate scheme. Tip number 3. Read and understand the product highlight sheet. For those of you who are unaware, the product highlight sheet is an easy-to-use document which you can typically obtain from the distributor's website. It recaps everything you need to know about the product you're investing in, such as the product suitability, investment objectives, product features, and key risks. Doing the legwork and reading the product highlight sheet ensures you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. So please, if there's anything you can take away from this session, it's that you really should proactively take control of your investment journey. Tip number 4, review your investment statements. Your investment statement is basically a document which summarizes your investment transactions for the relevant month, quarter, or year. Among others, your statement will tell you whether a transaction had occurred without your authorization and the profit and loss of your investment. Whenever you invest, you are entitled to receiving the investment statements of your investment account. Such investment statements are typically delivered to you via email or registered post. Some distributors even offer investors the option of signing up for their online platform and accessing their investment statement directly off the browser. Each distributor has a different approach to delivering investment statements, so before you decide to invest, make sure to ask these questions yourself. This will in turn allow you to make an informed decision whether to switch your investment to a different fund, redeem your money, or otherwise. Tip number 5, if you happen to be on the receiving end of a bad consultant, you can always lodge a complaint with FIMM. You can help us expedite the investigation process by sharing the following information: telling us exactly what happened in chronological order, cooperating with FIMM's investigation process by attending to our emails, phone calls, etc., and, most importantly, passing us any information in support of your complaint. This final point is very important because our sanctions are imposed based on a balance of probabilities. If you have no evidence to prove that your consultant had misrepresented you, for example, it is difficult for us to assume that the consultant had committed any wrongdoing. Keep a good record of all investment documents and communications between you and your consultant. Promises made via WhatsApp, for instance, is strong evidence that the consultant had in fact said what they said. Without this written evidence, we have no way of determining the truth. Now, before I end this particular slide, I must give you a caveat. There are limitations to what FIMM can do for you after a misconduct had occurred. For instance, if your complaint relates to the fund's performance, we have no way to act on that. As investors, you must be aware that each fund is subject to risk, even the lowest risk fund. FIMM is only able to step in when your consultant has committed a misconduct, and even then, FIMM's role would only be to investigate and sanction that consultant accordingly. We are not able to help you recover any losses. Tip number 6, learn from these case studies. Apart from the case studies shared during this presentation, FIMM sometimes shares kisah benars on our various publications, such as our e-zine and other knowledge-sharing efforts. Lastly, follow us on our socials and stay abreast on industry updates. We are regularly sharing tips and information to help you understand your rights better, so we highly encourage you to take full advantage of this opportunity. Remember, don't be a backseat driver in your investment journey. Take control of your investments and invest smart. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you very much for the very informative video. So now we will actually move on to the Q&A session. So we have a couple of questions that are already in. Okay, so the first one is actually, who regulates FIMM?
Okay, so we actually under the Securities Commission. So our status as the self-regulatory organization was accorded to us by the Securities Commission. So, yeah.
Okay, the next question is it compulsory for UTCs to show their FIMM identification when they meet their potential clients?
That's a must. As what mentioned in the video, so in the past we issued a card, that is renewed on a yearly basis. So there will be, duration, the validity, actually stated in the card. But we have done away with the card since August last year. So moving on, basically consultants have to actually show proof that they are an active consultant and registered with FIMM. They hold a valid registration status by going to our website. Alternatively, investor can also check on the validity of that particular consultant in our website as well.
Okay, right. And okay, so the next one is, what is the worst penalty imposed on UTCs for misconduct?
We can impose up to 30,000 fine to the consultant. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So don't try.
Okay. Okay. So the next one is, if I have
sorry, I got to correct that. It's 50,000. My apologies. It's actually higher. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. If I have a complaint against UTCs, do I go to FIMM or the SC?
Against the UTCs, in actual fact, we provide multiple channels. So you can start by going to the distributors, because when you talk about the records of your investments, when you talk about the history of the, who your servicing consultants are, they are all with the, the distributors. So you may go to the company so that you probably have a better resolution when it comes to your complaints. But in the event that you find there wasn't any reaction or action taken, or you're not satisfied with the action taken against the consultant based on your complaints, you may come to us as well. But I think, as mentioned in the video, you got to be mindful that we only regulate conduct, so we can only impose, sanctions against the consultants or distributors, but we won't be able to recover the money for you. Yeah, so I think that has to be, we have to clearly stipulate that. So, but if you want to talk about money, you probably want to go to CDRAC. Yeah, because they actually handle all the dispute resolution when it comes to monetary terms. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the next one is if the consultant is missing in action, what is the right for the investors?
You have the right to ask for a new servicing consultant. Typically, it depends on what do you mean by MIA, right? So if you want a consultant, a new consultant to be appointed, you can go to the distributor and you add your views and the concern that you have on your missing in action consultant, and for you to get a new one.
Okay, the next question we have is, what about investments with corporacy? Is it under FIMM?
No, it is not.
Okay, all right. So one more last question that we have here is it okay to give cash to you? This is because I'm just too busy doing it to do it myself.
That's a big no-no. I think, as what we mentioned, don't give cash, no matter who that person is, no matter how much you trust that person is, because you never know the predicament that that person is having at that point of time. When you do that, it is really at your own risk. I cannot emphasize enough in terms of the importance of not actually giving cash. Neither, you go and credit the money into the consultant's account. Yeah, because when everything good and dandy, everything goes well, it's really convenient to you. But when something hits you, then all hell breaks loose, right? So you're trying to get your money back. So it makes things a lot more complicated when that happens. So my advice is to not give cash to your consultant.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Puan Shalawati. Actually, that's pretty much it. So we have covered all the questions that we have received.
Okay.
So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Puan Shalawati, once again for speaking in our webinar today. Don't forget, if you wish to watch the webinar again, we will upload the webinar on our YouTube channel in due course. Do check out our previous webinar sessions on our YouTube channel as well. Stay tuned to our social media platforms as we will update on our next webinar sessions. Don't forget to follow our social media platforms for up-to-date information on our events and basic information on how to be a smart investor. Before we end this session, do not forget to do your due diligence when you invest. If an entity or individual asks you to deposit your money into their personal bank account, don't. Always check with the SE whether the entity or individual you're dealing with is either licensed or registered. Do also check SE's investor alert list before investing. Hope to see everyone again in our next webinar. Thank you.